It's March 27th, and we are, no, it's not, is it? Okay, it's March 27th. And this is the meeting of the Arts Commission, Grants and Funding Committee. And we're here. Could we do a roll call?
We sure can. All right.
Just for the heck of it.
Commissioner Lefkowitz,
Here.
Commissioner Jester,
Here.
Commissioner Knight,
Here.
Commissioner Wade, here. Commissioner Khalil, and we are good and set for quorum.
Excellent. And staff here,
We have Cindy Davis and myself, Vivian Fox.
and Ashley.
Ashley Batchelder, sorry.
That's good. She's on a different line. That's
Sorry.
perfect. Ashley Batchelder. This is the statement I read. I'm going to read this statement before I call to order. Pursuant to the provisions of 268030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, please take notice that the decisions of the Arts Commission may be appealed to the Chancery Court of Davidson County for review under a common law writ of certiorari. Any appeal must be filed within 60 days after entry of a final decision by the Commission. Any person or other entity considering an appeal should consult with an attorney to ensure time and procedural requirements are met. I did this backwards, so I want to go ahead and call the meeting to order now. We've already done the roll call and welcome you. And we will move right to public comment, if that's okay. Vivian, do we have any public comment today?
We do not have any in-person public comment, and we did not have any emailed public comments. So I just double-checked that email folder, and we did not have any, so we're good.
Perfect, thank you. And just a reminder that we do value public comment. There is public comment form on meeting pages, and commissioners always do like to hear from the public. I'll move on now to our discussion items. Did we have minutes to approve? We do?
Yes, they should be the second thing,
Great.
and they were emailed to you as well.
Yes. I'm sorry I don't have that on the agenda for some reason. I might have messed that up.
You don't?
Can I, yeah, I don't see it. Can I add that to the agenda, or we can't do anything?
It looks like C is missing from the printed version.
That's correct. C is missing from the printed version. Let me see if she's, let me see if she's, just check. Tessa's checking to see if the
It's
C is,
missing.
it's
missing
missing.
online as well.
Okay.
I don't see how we
So,
did that.
because our C is missing, Tessa, what do you recommend? Great. We will defer the approval of minutes until the next meeting. They are here for you, though, to review, so you may do so. Thank you, and we'll move to item D, discussion items. And so we do not have any things to vote on today, but just discuss. So we'll move first to an update on FY25, the grants update, and then we will move to talking about 26. With that, Ashley, can I turn it to you for looking at the timeline review and status update?
Yes. So if you go to the next slide, or maybe the next slide, you've got on the slides what commissioners you have in front of you. Yep, that's the right one. So the first document of interest in your packet is the table. This looks familiar because we've looked at it every meeting that we have. We've just continued the practice of updating it. And so if you flip to the back page, that's on page 4, the new information that we have for you today, which is just letting you know what we have done since the last time that we met. And so I'll just go through it, and it's also on the slide. So, of course, on March 3rd, that was when the commission approved the Thrive and Operating Award authorizations. On March 6th and March 7th was when we got those award notices out. And just to help kind of narrate the work so everyone understands the process, we do that through the submittable platform. And so it's setting up forms where the grantees can formally accept their award. And as part of that, they are requested to provide some additional information. That additional information includes a grant spending plan. And so that is essentially an updated budget from what was originally included in the application. And of course, we need an updated budget because the award sizes are a little different from what the applications were. So for example, for the Thrive applicants who had their original application had requested the $20,000 maximum, those awards ended up being about $18,704.84, I think it is. So updated budgets needed to be submitted to match the award amount, and that's a requirement that when we're processing it, we need to make sure those awards amount or match. And the same is for operating, because all of the operating organizations, because of the way the funding formula works, they learn what their award is when we tell them what it is. So if it's, $13,000, $25,000, they have to submit their budget that aligns with the award amount. So that's really the most substantial thing that we have to request from the grantees when they accept their award, along with just some, contact information and emails for where those contracts are routed to for signatures. So that was what was set up and sent out on March 6th and 7th. And the deadline to complete that information was March 20th. That was last Thursday. And we had all 75 Thrive awardees accept their grant. So that was 100%. And we had 89 of the 90 operating awardees accept their grant. So the one difference there is that one operating awardee decided not to accept their grant because they are appealing the decision. And I sent that to you all on Friday of last week, a copy of the appeals that we've received. And we don't have that on the agenda today because our guidelines instruct us that that is brought to a full commission. So this committee does not make a recommendation to full commission. It's just a commission decision. And so we'll be looking at the appeals process at our next full commission meeting. The next thing on the timeline here, so we had received all of that information by March 20th. On March 21st, so that was last Friday, we finalized all of those materials that we are processing and sent to the paralegal that is helping us from Metro Legal for routing the contracts. I'll just say it's a very manual process of organizing all of the exhibits and generating the 164 contracts with all of the unique information for each contract. And so we're certainly very grateful for the extra capacity that we have of the person who is helping us with that. And so the contracts are in various phases right now for signature. They go to the grantee for signing. The board chair and the director, president, CEO, whatever language is used in the organization, are the two signatures for the grantee. And then they go to me and I sign them. And then once I sign them, they go off to others for signature. And so as of today, well, as of last night, I had signed about 50 contracts of the 164. So they are moving along. And once they're signed by all parties, Metro Arts staff issues invoice for payments, and it is a Metro practice or Metro policy procedure that invoices are not paid until 30 days of the invoice date. I've been told we have no control over that, so that's why we give that range of how long it might take for funding to be dispersed. So I just wanted to narrate that a bit so people understand sort of the process of, how we get from A to B and how we make this work. And so any questions about the process or where we're at?
I just think in general, it is also, I appreciate hearing about the process as an educational function of this committee, because I just don't know, it's good for us all to know, I think, and just have it on the record and we can go back and know. So I appreciate the narration of the process.
Great. And so I think if you go to the next slide, it's, we got nope, go back one more. Nope, back, that one. Next one. That one. Yeah, and I'll hand it to Sydney to tell you about the other handout you've got.
Hello, everyone. Hi, so what you'll see in front of you is this one right here. We don't have it up on the screen, but this is just a breakdown of who some of our our fiscal agents, and then how many individual grants that they are supporting as a fiscal agent. Again, remember, there was a certain level of openness about how they were able to determine if and how much an admin fee would be as their services for being a fiscal agent to the grantees, or for the awardees, my apologies. And what you'll see on the side is if it was a flat fee of just a certain dollar amount, or if it was a percentage. And as you'll see, most people chose to go with either a low or no admin fee. And we do have a handful that just chose a flat dollar amount. I think our largest admin fee for a flat amount was $1,000. And if we see on the next column to the left, you'll see how many grants they supported. So our largest fiscal agent was a supporter of 9 awardees, and then we have, majority of them chose just to support 1. So any questions about this? And so remember, those admin fees will come from the award that they were given and that we're contracting for now. And yeah, so I would say that most people decided to go either low or no. We said majority of them were under 5%. We had a handful at 10 and 7.5 on the larger. Just remember the guidelines, nothing larger than 10%. So, but yeah, so we are finding some really good feedback on how we might, kind of alter this for next cycle and just make it a little bit more streamlined. But any questions just last time?
It looks like 13 out of the 31 went with a 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah, and then when you do the
so
math,
almost half.
Yeah, and then when you do the math for the handful that did the flat fee, of course, it's dependent on how much the award was. Most of the flat fees fell under 5% as well, like if you do the rough math. So we just had to categorize it exactly how it was stated in their fiscal agency letters, so. Oh, and another tidbit, for those who did multiple, we didn't find that there was a big difference, or that they chose to do a different score, or not a different score, a different fee. Like if they were covering 3 awards, we saw that they chose the same fee across the board, that there wasn't a lot of difference. I mean, they would have had the right to do that, but we saw that they were kind of, standard.
So, thank you. That's good to see that data. And does that conclude that part? of the update for 25? Okay. Okay, so, where should we go next? Descriptive profiles? That's what we just did. Let's move on then, if there's no other questions about 25. And again, I'm very appreciative. I know we keep seeing the timeline again and again, but I love seeing it. The red, I love tables, and so that's very helpful. And I think we'll go with the same model for 26. So moving into 26, the first thing we want to talk about is a review of possible timelines for 26, including community engagement. So good segue.
Okay, show me what I've got on the next slide. What's the next slide look like? Okay, so there's two documents in your packet for this conversation. So one is this one pager of a table for a proposed timeline, and then the next is a community engagement 2-page document. So I'll go section by section. So we are planning a series of community engagement events for April. March was really focused on processing all of this information that came in from grantees. And so we've been having lots of one-on-one conversations, but we haven't got until these dates that I'm about to talk about. This will be sort of our big kickoff of talking about FY26. And so I put some sort of framing on this document that you have that I just think is important for how we're going to frame this conversation. And I want to see how this kind of resonates with you, if it's what you're kind of assuming, if it's a surprise to hear me frame sort of this way. So Metro Arts is moving quickly into discussions and planning for the next cycle, FY26, as we call it. And we're going to do this while acknowledging a few important points. We know that we are going to be asking people to come talk about next year before they have received their funding for this year, and we're going to acknowledge that. But we want to do this in order to not cause delays in when we can move into the next cycle. And when we look at the timeline that I've mapped out, you'll see our estimated funding timeline. So you'll know what I mean when I get to that point. And so if the goal is to prevent delays for FY26, then we're really having to realistically talk about what we can kind of change around the edges of these funding models in the policies as they are today, really thinking about things that can be adjusted in the next 4 to 6 weeks that aren't going to require extensive rounds of revisions and changes. And so knowing that these engagement opportunities and engagement events will really be about facilitating space for really getting and giving clarity on this cycle that just happened, because I know we continue to get questions from lots of folks on the regular about, help me understand why the grant amount is this way, or help me understand why this change was made this year. And so I think these conversations will be for clarifying where we are right now, discussing what is possible for FY26, and knowing that larger changes that people want to talk about will have to be deferred to FY27. So that's kind of these 3 cycles that we're thinking about on this. Again, I'm going to call it a pretty aggressive schedule that we're about to talk about. So the proposed sort of engagement methods that we have listed here, we'll design a survey that will be available for this period from April, what's the period that I put on here? April 6th through the 25th or so. So we're really looking at about a 3-week engagement period. And we've planned 5 different listening sessions, town halls. We don't have a specific name for them yet, but on these dates as listed. April 10th on a Thursday evening, we've got space reserved at Studio 615 for a general and overall operating and thrive session. On Tuesday, April 15th, we've got space planned at Trinity Community Commons to have a Thrive focused session. We've got a pending, we're waiting for confirmation that same week, April 16th or 17th, for an operating focus session. So we thought it's important to have those two separate ones. And then two more general sessions that will address both operating and Thrive. One at the 100 Taylor space and one that will be virtual. So we've tried to plan these opportunities at different locations, different days, different times. In addition to those, I am on the back of the page going to just publicize, and I'll call them director drop-ins or whatever name I come up with them, but where I will just be in a public space for 2 hours and folks can come talk about whatever. And so these engagement events will cover, like I've kind of said, an overview of where we are and the funding models that we are starting from. And then facilitated discussions about opportunities for making adjustments to these models. And so I listed some things here. It's not an exhaustive list. But for example, for the operating model, we could talk some about these budget tiers, if they're the correct amounts, the percentages, allocations within categories. For Thrive, I imagine we have a lot to talk about with fiscal agency and how that process can be approved or improved. And of course, for both grant programs, there's lots to talk about with the applications and how the scoring works and reporting, the distribution between Thrive and operating and so on. So this is our plan for really a concentrated 3-week period for these public engagements, and really thinking about them as trying to be iterative. And so, you know, by the time we get to the final 2 general sessions, we might be making some tweaks based on, you know, ideas that came out of the first one. So trying to, you know, have these as dynamic spaces that are responsive to the things that we're hearing. So looking at this timeline, and you can go to the next slide, the rest of this timeline situates everything that would happen after that community engagement period, but I will pause if people want to share comments, questions, suggestions, concerns around the community engagement part before I move on.
I have a question about, in terms of like I guess this might be like the marketing or the invitation for these. Will some of this information about kind of the opportunities for adjustment or what will be covered, I guess just giving them a chance to think and know, kind of not really an agenda, but maybe they can come with questions or you can present questions in advance. So is that part of the plan as well? Because I think that would help them to do some pre-thinking to know and come ready.
Yeah, by the beginning of next week, hopefully on Monday is when we'll be able to make announcements. Well, I think that we can do like save the dates like as soon as tomorrow on our social media and Arts Alert emails, and with that information that we'll provide more detailed information about what to expect, you know, at least a week before these. So just thinking about, yeah, there's the planning that will go into them, which I feel good and excited about doing these. And we will make it more, or we'll make it clear what people are, you know, coming to, and that, you know, interactive and group discussion and what we can provide in advance kind of with the invitation as well.
This will be my first full cycle on the Grants Committee, so I just want to check. I assume it's helpful if Grants Committee members are there?
Yes, and I may ask Tessa to remind me, should we publicly notice these meetings? And then, no, they're not publicly noticed, because then we would need a quorum. Yeah.
Yeah, in the past when Kara's brought this up, I just said it can't be an iterative discussion. If there's two or more commissioners, it can't be an iterative discussion from those commissioners. It can't be viewed as deliberating towards a decision of the commission.
But to be there to hear feedback
To listen.
is useful.
Yeah. Yeah, and then obviously, if any feedback you hear in that meeting, as you're attending, comes up in a decision-making process in front of this committee or the commission, it would be best practice for you guys to discuss. I attended this meeting. This is my, my basis for this decision. It's transparency. And then if you obtain information outside of a board or commission meeting, you have to disclose that information in your decision-making process.
Yeah, I would definitely say, Commissioner Knight, that it would be my hope that we could go to as many as we can. I found them really helpful. So, yeah. I guess the obvious thing would be we would be on the invitation list too, or be notified.
So stay tuned. So we'll get those save the dates out, and then the more thorough information to folks. So again, that'll give people, a week and a half to 2 weeks notice for the first one, but they will run for 3 weeks. So hopefully somebody will be able to find a date that works for their schedule. So if we go back one slide, what I've got on the slide is just the next part on this handout here that you have. And so that puts us in the subcategory here of the approval process for the guidelines. This is where it's a pretty tight schedule. And so I want to, acknowledge that. So after the community engagement dates, we've got the full commission set for April 30th. That should be on everybody's calendar by now. Vivian's sent you that information. And so hopefully we can have a grants committee meeting before that. And I wrote this in an email that hopefully everybody got yesterday, commissioners. But we're going to really try to get back into a regular meeting schedule. And so for grants, our recommendation is going to be that grants meets, 1 week before the commission meeting. And so April TBD, 1 week before April 30th. For our next grants committee meeting, there could be actions that we have at that meeting about sort of simple policy decisions, like, what's the background check policy going to be this year? But that meeting will not be major grant decisions. But by that time, we will have a lot of preliminary information, and we'll be able to talk about, for sure, the outcomes of these community engagement meetings and what we are proposing as a result of them, or thinking about proposing as a result of them. Because that puts us to, so May 22nd is what I've got on the timeline here as the May meeting for commission. That's not confirmed, but it's going to be what Vivian is going to be polling folks' availability for. So this timeline is based on a commission meeting meets on the 4th Thursday of every month. So those were the ways that I structured this. So that 4th Thursday in May would put us at approving the FY26 guidelines. It's some pretty tight turnarounds there for getting all of that to legal with the time that they need to for their review process, and then with the filing deadline the day after that tentative commission meeting date. So we can do it, but it's going to be, for staff, it's going to be a sort of some pressure points on that timeline. I will say, I think everybody knows this, but just to remind us, one of the council ordinances that passed last year did require, or does require, that our guideline, or not our guidelines, our criteria, grant criteria, go to the Metro Council for approval every year. So it's explicit that it's each year. And so I've mapped this out to a June 3rd council approval. And we'll be having some discussions about what exactly we're sending the council. This last cycle, we basically gave them everything because we know that's what people wanted to see. And so we'll be having conversations about what exactly we're giving them for the grant criteria. I want to say I've had conversations with some of the Apple committee, so the Arts, Parks, Library, and Entertainment Committee of the Metro Council that is chaired by Councilwoman Brenda God, about having an informational meeting like they have done in the past. I've let them know that I think that there would be a lot of value in that and would be very happy to participate, representing Metro Arts as the interim director. Others may be asked to participate in that as well. But knowing that this is, again, a tight approval schedule, June 3rd is also really peak budget season. That's the night that there's a public hearing on the Metro budget. So there's going to be a lot going on in sort of the Metro legislation world that day. And so I'm hoping that that special informational Apple committee meeting could be held much earlier before we get to that June date. So that's something that I'm working on. So that's the approval process. Questions about that part?
And the June 3rd, there's not a council meeting in July, is there? Or is that a month when they're off? I don't even want to.
They're always on.
Oh, I thought they had.
There's one time that they're off, but it is not that.
Great. They're never off. That's great.
They're off the first September of a new term, but that's it. So once every 4
Great.
years.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Perfect. No worries. But I think, yeah, I appreciate the fact that this is tight, and I know how that is. I also think, from our perspective, thinking about getting this before summer, and we might have challenges, right, with travel schedules and things like that as summer heats up. And yeah, so I'm appreciative, and I know it will be hard for staff, and we are here to support, but I like I don't want to say aggressiveness, but the what? Thank you, Commissioner Wade. The urgency of it, I think is good. So to move on to the next sort of block here on the timeline, assuming a council approval on June 3rd, that would put us ready to open up applications. On here, I've put application period open for 4 weeks. If we hear through community engagement, if everyone is saying we need 8 weeks and that's really important, that number could change. But I've put 4 weeks on here for the planning purpose here. So during those 4 weeks, we'll be doing, additional engagement around applications and making sure applicants are supported in whatever they need to submit their applications. And so I've listed some different ways that we plan to do that. Pre-recorded videos that can just be available on our website where we walk through things that people should know. Individual sign-up, drop-in sessions, virtual, in-person, as well as just kind of open drop-in sessions and that sort of thing. We've put a 2-week time frame for technical review, so that's the staff process, and then another 2.5 week for community panel review. And of course, we'll be recruiting community panelists before that, so likely in June. And so
those two things were a thing that we had on a very shortened timeline for this cycle. And so building in that space to have more time to move through that in this cycle. So it's the application period. That moves us into the second type of approval, which is allocations and award authorizations. And so August 28th, again, is the fourth Thursday of the month. So using that as our tentative commission meeting for approvals. And so, again, with the grants committee meeting 1 week before August 28th, and that gives us a bit of some cushion time, because if we look at August 5th to August 28th, there's a lot that we can do as staff to make sure that, or to prep sort of contracts to be ready on, the day at, there's things that we can work in to move very quickly after August 28th. And this period between August 5th and August 28th, if we get behind on schedule, it's built that in. And so on this estimated approval of August 28th, I've put in contracts will go out 2 to 4 weeks after that, because again, when I was speaking earlier about the prep work that goes into the contracts and getting the required documentation, there's that time to do it. And so that puts us thinking or planning for fund disbursements going out in November to early December. And so, at the beginning, I said we're starting right now and it's going to take us through the end of the year. So that's kind of how we get there. And questions, comments?
Couple of questions. Thank you. This is a lot of work, and we appreciate what you all are doing. And I apologize, in my short 13, 15, however many months on the commission, I don't remember the typical grant timeline. What is the typical grant timeline? When are they typically available for folks to start?
Historically, they would have opened in January,
In January. That leads to
like end of the year, top of spring.
the time when we're thinking they're going to probably be getting their first disbursement for 26-ish. Yeah. So recognizing that, how and when are we going to begin concurrent planning for 27 so that right after they get their first disbursement, they're actually writing another grant? And so that leads to my third question. We're making potential assumptions that FY26 won't have big changes in the guidelines if we don't hear a lot out of this in community engagement. But we do expect there to be potentially some reversions, I think, back to the equity-minded ways in which we were planning for this last fiscal year. So is there a working group? Is there a plan for a working group? What is the process by which we will be prepared? And if that, certainly, I know y'all are thinking about it, but I think the sooner we put together a timeline around that, the better able we'll be to garner the assistance or have someone to go back to review all of those things, but keeping that at the forefront, especially as we think about fiscal year 27 and us looking at what those councilmanic districts look like. I don't even know how that work is supposed to happen, but we also probably need a third column on this document.
Yeah, I was having a conversation yesterday afternoon with a council member who called me wanting to know what the plan is. And as we were talking, I had the realization of exactly what you just said, where I said probably in November or December is when we're going to be coming with the resolution for the next criteria. And so, yes, to everything you just said.
Both at the same time. Yeah. Not even waiting, but I don't know who's going to. Thank y'all for doing that.
Well, and it almost makes me think, like, I totally agree. And I had the same question, your first question about, like, because, we all are, everybody here like, we're all fairly new in terms of our institutional memory of the process, but thinking about, I was even thinking, Commissioner Wade, about like a timeline that was 3 or 4 years, right? Like, the university has a calendar of like 3 or 4 years, like the things, so that we almost could see, like, so this is happening here for this, and this needs to be we need to start. So I agree with you, I think, and like thinking about it kind of as a simultaneous process and what needs to happen backing up from that.
Because for me, that leads to another question. Is there a hire of temporary staff? Is there a hire of regular staff that works with the grants department, et cetera? We probably need to really, really, really think about that, especially since you're interim, unless you're planning to stay.
Well, that's a good point, though, thinking about hiring and like the relationship of that to like director search and what will happen there kind of simultaneously, which is like all kind of a thing. But I think we also, to your point, like don't need to wait to start at least creating a visual of like how the process could look. And I know you're like in your conversations with organizations and artists too, like thinking about that would be some of the feedback that I would want, like in terms of their history. They have a lot of deep institutional memory, a lot of them, in terms of the process and what has worked. So yeah, I love that. I'm also happy to help on that table because I, enjoy things like that. I do. I love it. I do.
Yes. Yes to all the things. That makes sense. Yeah. And yeah, the real needs that we have for capacity and thinking about how to better use the capacity that we do have while we think about strategies for increasing capacity, be it through the budget process that is about to come or just thinking about what we can do in the interim. So, what is on the next slide? Okay, so that's any other about, timeline, what to expect in the next 6 months, 6 years, and everything in between. You're still gonna be here in 6 years, most of you. I'm just, all your terms, sorry. I'm not that funny, but I try to make jokes.
That was very funny.
Okay. Mike.
Just especially since they're cutting commission size, was not really germane to the rest of the conversation.
So, move on to the next document if there's no other comments on this. So the next slide is updates to policy. We just lost the slide, but slide didn't really say anything. Well, I mean, it said something, but it's not an image of a document. So the viewing audience is just missing a slide that says, updates to policy discussions. You've got the last thing in your packet is, 3-pager that has some notes from some one-on-one meetings that I've done. I think I mentioned in one of our earlier commission meetings, I had, received a lot of folks who just wanted to talk after I started this role. And so I held off on doing a lot of those sort of relationship maintenance conversations, relationship building conversations until after our last commission meeting. And so I've been able to do a handful of one-on-ones with different individual artists, organizations that really are across types of organization, size, pretty representative of the pool of grantees that we have. And so I wanted to provide my notes for you there, and I have a few things that I'll say about them, but I wanted to just kind of take the opportunity to say a few things that sort of frame the conversation, thinking about where we've been, where we want to go, thinking about me as the interim director right now, that you all know who I am, right? But wanted to just sort of speak a little bit, a minute or so about sort of my positionality in the grant world, and so that people understand sort of the tendencies that I'm likely to think in, right? And I think that's really important when we're talking about these discussions. And so, through my roles in the last few years, I've been able to talk to every commissioner who has served in the last 3 years or so. And so I have all of that knowledge from those conversations that I've had. But for me specifically, I wanted to just say a few things for the sake of transparency and, who I am. So I have not worked in an arts organization, but I have been a co-director and a development manager at local nonprofits. And so I've been on the staff side of managing a grant portfolio for a local organization. To use the Metro Arts language, it was a medium-sized organization when I came in, and it was a mid-sized organization when I left. So moving from about a $400,000 budget to an $800,000 budget over the few years that I was there. During my time as a co-director and a development manager, I had to have conversations with some of our funders that our funding had been terminated because of planned timelines. So one of our foundations gave the organization the first ever grant that we received, and it was always a policy that after 8 years, you transition off funding from them. And so I understand the importance of predictability and planning in that sense on the grantee side, and the role that funders have in being transparent and having those conversations. When I was at that organization, one of our local foundations here, who I know has been part of Metro Arts conversations around building in more equity into our process, was experimenting with different things when we were a grantee. And so some of the things that I remember was, instead of doing written reports one year, they just had meetings with us to have conversations where, when you're sort of in a conversation, you're able to kind of move through those things that feel like the grantor wants to learn more about it when you're having a conversation, versus when you are feeling the pressure of what should I write on this report and how's the best way to say it, right? That funder also assembled panels for their funders at the foundation to hear directly from folks within the organization doing the work. And so those are some of the examples that I remember when I was the grantee, that one of our funders was experimenting with how they can change their processes and improve them with an equity lens. When I was at that organization, we also served as a fiscal sponsor for a coalition that eventually went on to become a 501c3 themselves. So I have experience as the fiscal sponsor. I'm currently a board member, not for an arts organization, but that would be a micro organization using Metro's terminology. And so being a micro organization, we're a volunteer org, we have no staff, it's a working board. And so, every grant that I know that we go after as a micro organization is really just put to supporting paid work that we can pay contractors that we have. We can pay folks a living wage, but knowing that as a micro organization, it's hard to secure operating funds and project funds, and you're all reliant on volunteer board, and we're lucky if we're able to, sustain somebody for 10 or 12 hours throughout a year. And that organization started, we were a fiscally sponsored organization, and we moved through the process of obtaining our C3 a couple years ago. And so I say that to say I have been on both sides of fiscal sponsorship, and so I've seen different ways that we operated. as an organization, and acknowledging that as an organization, it's different from an individual seeking fiscal sponsorship. But I just wanted to sort of position myself in the experience that I bring with these different size categories and as a grantee, as a board member, because I think the characteristics of the different organizations that we serve are important in how we think about our role as a funder. And so thank you for giving me the mic to sort of say that in the sort of last framing that I wanted to do as we move into these community engaged events next month. And these are things that people have heard before, but I'm just going to say them again. Equity is a core part of our mission at Metro Arts, and that has been an ongoing conversation for years, right? When we think about funding, we know, according to the MHRC report, that 10 organizations since 1987 have received 70% or almost 70% of the Metro Arts Grants funds. And so we know that there have been these policy goals of distributing funds to a greater audience or a greater pool of applicants. I can say that 10 organizations having received 70% of the funds. We have 90 grantees this year, right? So our numbers alone show how we have brought more organizations into being supported by Metro Arts. And I just want to continue to think how we, we as staff make our recommendations to you, and you as commissioners, anything that we can do to help sort of frame these decisions in the ongoing work of years of Metro Arts. And so, again, because I've been able to speak individually with every commissioner who has served in the last 3 years, just hearing the emphasis of people saying, we've been talking about this for a long time, and we want to make sure that we're thinking about how do we support our smaller organizations or those who haven't had access, right? It's not only based on size, but access to our public resources. So that's the overall framing, and how I think it's important how we think about ourselves in here as well. So thank you for giving me space to do that. And I'll refer you to your last paper in the packet here. So I'm not going to read through this, of course, but you can read it on your own. But this is a summary of the conversations that I've had with different grantees as identified here. And so I have notes on fiscal sponsorship, what that experience was like for both sides, right? I spoke to 2 fiscal sponsors, and I spoke to 4 individual artists. And so, overall, I would say folks thought more structure might be helpful, more structure, more guidance. We as staff, folks are going to be doing research about that so that we can bring informed, our other work was informed, but additionally informed resources and thoughts around that to make improvements that we know will benefit everyone. I have some notes here about Thrive funding and about the operating funding formulas. It's kind of what I talked about in the community engagement sessions. There's so many ways that we can sort of cut up the operating formula to talk about in different ways. We can talk about the budget tiers, we can talk about the percentages, we can talk about sort of the pass-fail scoring method versus a more ranked scoring method. I've got all these notes in the document here, and this will be all part of community engagement. Yeah, so I'll just, that's really what I want to say. Kind of thinking about this as carrying on the work that this commission and the staff and the community have been committed to, and thinking about how we are supporting the whole arts ecosystem, but especially supporting those who have had less access in the past. And so that's the information that we have been, I don't know if other staff want to add anything as well. I'm not the only person having conversations, of course, but that's what I have for you all.
I appreciate the discussion of positionality, which is a word that comes that in my daily life at my job, but I think that is a helpful thing for us all to think about, is where we've been on the side. I mean, I know when we voted, we did the recusals, right? And makes me think like around kind of articulation of different, our own, just having an awareness of our positionality, what roles we've served in either an arts organization or another organization, and how that might impact the way we see and may impact the kinds of conversations we need to have in terms of there being a gap, right? Or just an awareness of that, I think, is really helpful. So I'm appreciative of that. And I am also appreciative how these conversations will feed in what I'm hearing to the community engagement in terms of maybe the way that the staff is thinking about what to bring forward as a way of starting the conversation with them. So I think that's very helpful.
And I have a question. I think I am aware of the foundation you're talking about, and I really do appreciate the work of the foundation that I know that did something very similar. And so I'm wondering, is there any interest in potentially us as a commission talking with them, hearing from them, because it was a very real shift, but I think they were groundbreaking in the city, in the Middle Tennessee region, around equitable funding strategies and ways that they did it. And I've been encouraging them for years to teach all of the rest of the foundations in the city. So is there a way, I don't know if it fits within law and all of those kinds of things around what we can do to hear from those kinds of folks and then potentially apply some of that in addition to the community engagement kind of work, because it is hard, it is long, and it does take long-term commitment, which is why we're talking about what does it look like for fiscal year 27 so that we don't lose what it is that we said we were going to do.
Yeah, I would love to do that. It's been on my list. I've not directly reached out, but I think those relationships are there and they're there to be used. And so, absolutely.
Almost like a retreat, but like, if we had sorry, I know it's very bad, but no, I know it's so hard to make it happen. Or a meeting here where they could be invited. I would truthfully love that, because I do think if people have done similar, if there are things out there that people have been through and done, we can learn from them, and I would like to do that.
And that's not at all to discount the other work that has already been done around that. So I want to say that because some folks tend to miss those kinds of nuances when you talk about other folks who have done those things. But as a specific funding entity in the city that has done it, and not everybody liked it, but yeah.
Yeah, on page 3 of the notes document that I gave you, under general, I'll read it out loud, and I'll make this available on the slides, and we'll post the slides as well. But one of the things that I heard from a few people that I talked to says commissioners and staff need to, I think that's supposed to say better understand how arts organizations work, such as season planning, contracting. Maybe we can have people from different mediums come in to talk about what our years look like, planning years. And that's not to say that people don't understand. Many of y'all exist in that world, right? But a feeling in the community of wanting to have those conversations, right? And so I think that could go along with inviting other sort of, call them stakeholders, partners in the work.
General, that particular comment, as I was reading through these things, struck me because it talks about onboarding. And when I came on board, there was no real onboarding. And I think, this is me guessing, I think that that's a reason some of our commissioners have recently resigned, is they felt like they were in over their heads and they got no information to get started, which makes our work harder to do. So I think any information we can get as we start things out, whether it's about the arts community, about the process of this, about anything, would be helpful for sure.
Yeah, and specific ideas that you want to task, it's my job to make sure you all feel supported, right? Vivian and I were talking the other day with Chair West about trying to get something on the books. I know that has been being said for a while, and so it's a conversation that we've revived about, call it a retreat or an orientation. I also am very available, would prioritize any one-on-one time with anybody that wants to be able to sit down and dig into this stuff. I've done that with a handful of commissioners, but not with everybody. And so thinking about how we can use the times that we have together how can we use the times, and do we need more times, and what should those times look like, right? And so.
And I think it can also be, like to your point about inviting someone to come or whatever, like using these meetings as that time too, and maybe even our commission meetings, if we need to use them, the times when we are gathered, right? Using them strategically to learn more about this. Either that or we implant a chip in people's brains. You didn't get that chip, Commissioner Knight, implanted in your brain when you were no, but I totally understand. Yeah, it's a lot. Mm-hmm.
I know there was conversation about having like orientation or like a retreat like within a commission meeting. And then I know that there was some discussion of possibly wanting to have it on a Saturday. So I don't know. We can field out the commission as a whole to see if that's possible. I don't know. Legal will have to come in and say, like, can we do that? Is that not okay? What would?
We've previously opined we discourage Metro business on a Saturday. We've got civil service employees, exempt, non-exempt employees. So there's employment law rules we have to consider. And Saturdays are not normal business hours for Metro.
There is precedent for, I remember like one of those meetings in either the July or August meeting that from 23, the greatly discussed two meetings. One of them was, I remember, a longer meeting, right?
In August, when I first joined the department, there used to be a meeting where it was, I want to say it was CARE, and it was the commission as whole. So it'd be the commissioners, and then it would be CARE members at the round table together. And then it'd be a big discussion. Or there'll be like different exercises done. So I think that we could change it and make it something different, either June, August, whatever would work best. But do something like that, I think would be great. But that's just my opinion. I know everybody else has to have some input into that as well.
So this is all very helpful, and just my thanks to you and to the staff for putting it together. I may just try to start putting together a 3-part column thing, and we can all collaborate on it, share it with staff. And
share it through me, not with each other.
Yeah, right. Not with you all, with you all, but not with you all. But trying to create something like that, maybe I think that would be really helpful to keep this on our planning focus. And just to confirm, you will let us know about all of the community engagement events as well, and the full commission as well, in case they want to come. That's cool. Okay, let's move to new old business. Is there any new old business that we have today
This is
to
not
discuss?
necessarily new old business, but would you like these back, or would you like us to hold on to minutes that we're deferring? What would you like?
If you can hold on to those, and if you see if any edits or anything, maybe you didn't say one of the many. Yes, I wanted to get these right, so they are very detailed. Me and Ashley went back and forth on a lot of it just to make sure everything was accurate as much as possible. So if you would like to do that, that would be wonderful and great. I appreciate it.
Should we look to scheduling the next meeting, just since we're sitting here, could we try? Because what was your recommendation, Ashley, about the time?
So what Vivian will be polling you all, based on committees that you serve on, our suggestion is that grants committee be 1 week prior to full commission meetings moving forward for regular and consistency. So that would be the third week of the month is when we would be looking for grants meetings.
Actually, I want to say that would specifically probably start in May because April is going to be a tad bit different. So if we look at the dates for April,
Yeah, because there's 5, for example, there's 5, oh no.
4.
So we're thinking about the 30th, which is a Wednesday for a full commission meeting.
It is. That's the one that's set for full commission on the 30th.
So could we look at the 23rd is a Wednesday, the 24th is a Thursday for this committee in terms of availability? I know Commissioner Khalil's not here. Sorry, this is April.
April.
Which, I'm sorry, what?
We're looking at Wednesday or Thursday, the 23rd or 24th, 11 a.m.
Those right now. I can do either of those right now.
You can?
The 24th would be better for me.
Okay. So maybe we could
So the 24th?
ask Commissioner Khalil. And, but that sounds great. So maybe put a hold on that on your calendars. And that would be good. And we'll work towards getting on a schedule so that it's all good. Okay. Any other older new business, newer old business?
I'll just say I've had about 24 contracts roll in during this meeting, and so things are moving along.
And checks are being issued, right? No?
No, so that's again, once we issue an
Oh, right.
invoice.
The invoices
30
are going
days.
out. Got it. It's all happening. So, yes, I'm very grateful to all of you for all your work. It's amazing. Okay, if there's not anything else, I will ask for, do I need a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second? Adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.